Hi, I'm Peter Kalmstrom of kalmstrom.com Business Solutions. In this demonstration, I will show you how to create a document library. If you've seen my previous demo on how to create a list, it's almost exactly the same, so I'm going to continue building on that. The main difference between creating a list and creating a document library is the template you are going to be using. So if you haven't seen my previous demos in this series and this looks like a lot of code to you, then go back and I've explained everything step by step. But now let's create document libraries. First of all, we have a site which I have cleared out now, so there are no previous lists. There's just an hello world list that we created earlier that we can leave there. And now we're going to create one document library for each of these departments. So now I have a function here that creates lists. I can just create another one that creates libraries and just copy the whole thing. Bear with me, I'm going to fix this later because I don't like copying code in general. But this is going to be my library, right? And it's still going to have a list name and a list URL with all that we've done here. But it's going to change the template to document library, right? And then, of course, we're going to say in the progress message here that a library has been created. All right, so now we have a function. I'm just going to introduce that to PowerShell by running it like that. Now we've introduced it, so now we can do create my library. There we go. Now I'm just going to run that bit and there. And now I've created 5 libraries in this site, one for each of the departments. Let's just check that I'm not lying to you. I am indeed not. It's here. All right, great. So now we have 2 functions, one that creates lists, one that creates libraries, and they do almost exactly the same thing, just 2 minor differences, right? So I'm going to make this better by introducing a third parameter to this function. So I'm going to create another function called Create My App, which is going to take the list type or the list template. Microsoft sometimes calls lists and libraries apps, so it's a reasonable naming standard according to Microsoft at least. So we're going to do a third one. I am going to clean this up later and just do my app here, and that's going to take another parameter. And to make sure I get help when I'm typing using this function, I'm going to type this variable and I'm going to type it as a template. And that is typed. So let's go into the tools here and show the command add-on there. There. And here you see I've been using the list here. So here's the template. And that is typed. Here we see the type. There we go. Microsoft SharePoint Client List Template type. So if I put another parameter here on my function and type that, instead of just string, I'll type it as Microsoft SharePoint. And there we go, client. There we have the list template type. There we go. And then I'm just going to end that bracket there and call it app type. So now I can take that app type variable and put that in here as the template. App type there. And then I can do the same here in the outputs. There we go. And just do app type. However, now this is not a string anymore. So in order to be able to write to host, I don't want to output that client list template enumeration. I want to convert that to a string. So that's what I'm going to do, to string. Almost all objects have a toString function that puts it into a string format so you can work with it. And then I'm just going to do a space, and there we go. Now I have a Create My App. And let's clear out what we already have. There we go. Now it's removing that. And now I can do Create My App. And now the list name. And I can still skip the list URL and just select the app type and let's do announcements. There we go. Or actually, let's do task list. That makes more sense because, of course, each department can have their own tasks then. So let's do that. Maybe they have their own announcements also. But anyhow, let's do this. I've introduced the function already, or let's do it again just to make sure. There we go. Introducing the function to PowerShell so that it works. Great. And now I can create 5 task lists very, very quickly. So we have now a function that can create any type of SharePoint list very quickly. So now we have no less than 3 functions that does the same thing here, almost the same thing. It creates apps in SharePoint. So that is, well, now we have almost 40 lines of code here. So it's starting to get a little bit messy. So let's clean this up now, because of course all of these do almost exactly the same thing. So this create my list, the only thing it does is, it has this generic list hard-coded in there. So what I can do instead, if somebody calls this function, I don't want to take it away because somebody else might be using it if they're using my code, and it's still rather beautiful to have a dedicated create my list function. So let's not take that away, but let's clean it up. And instead, the create my list will call the other one. It will create my app and send along the list name that we already have as a parameter, list name, there, and then send along the list URL that we already have as a parameter in this function, and then send along the app type generic list, because that's the specific thing in this, right? So now we can take away all of that there. So now this function, create my list, it still works, but it's using the other function, create my app. I'm going to do exactly the same thing in the other one, create my library, remove all that, and just do create my app, and then do document library. So now we still have 3 functions, but we have, 10 lines less of code, or 15 lines less of code. We have 1 function that creates the app, and just 2 others. So now I can remove the list that I already have, and just test all of this out. Introduce all of these new functions now to PowerShell by running them. There we go. And now let's just do create lists. There we go, create my list, and just do this. There. So my old function, create my list, still works, but in the background it's calling this create my app. That's just sending along a generic list. So let's run it and see how that goes. Generic list, HR has been created. Great. Let's see how that works. Refresh this. And indeed, we have lists, one for each one: engineering, HR, IT, marketing, sales. All right. Great. So now in this demo, I've showed you how to create document libraries. Great. We have a function for that now. And I've also showed you more on how to use and reuse functions. Thank you for watching this demonstration.